Hello everyone, this is Jake from CINECALIBER. In today's video, I will be reviewing the first 4 episodes of the new season of Lord of the Rings of Power. Now guys, I'm going to get into a little bit of background here for this show. So basically, this show so far has been pretty mixed. The first season has been both loved and hated for different reasons, but I, for one, have enjoyed the show even though it took a good chunk of its first season to truly develop. By episode 6, I was all in that first season and thought the show built into a really great story. And I would give the first season a solid 3 out of 5 for its efforts. It definitely had some issues with like dialogue, just weird pacing, but overall, they tried to do a really good job to try to kind of give us this new universe. So I will give them that. But I also want to point out that what people don't realize, especially the Tolkien purists, is that this show is loosely based on the lore of Lord of the Rings. Now, for most people, that may be a turnoff, as they want something lore accurate. But the problem is, Amazon Studios doesn't have the licensing rights to adapt the Lord of the Rings lore, such as the Silmarillion, which is a huge piece of that lore. Also, the history of Middle Earth, amongst other things. What they do have the rights for is to the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit film trilogies, and of course certain appendices of the stories. So there is a lot of accurate lore they can tackle, but there's a lot they couldn't. So kind of keep that in mind if you ever want to give this show a chance or are kind of hesitant on it. My thing is that despite the inability to show an accurate interpretation, Amazon does a really good job in showing us a prequel story exploring the origins of the Rings of Power. And unlike the Acolyte show, it actually does build and it develops quite nicely. And you walk in knowing that this show is loosely based on the source material, so I'm not as off put by the loose interpretation. The Acolyte, they tried to just throw in a bunch of random stuff and hope that it would all stick. Here, they actually, you can see they have some sort of a plan, and they still do attach certain things, but they also try to make it their own. So there's an idea behind the whole thing. And we're going to get into the reviews now, guys. This is just a little background information on the show. This is the review on episode 1. We're going to go over what was a hit, the good. I'm going to be going over what is a hit in each of the episodes before I kind of sum up what was a miss in all 4. Okay? So, what I really liked in the first episode, the biggest takeaway was the fact that it showed a lot of vast exploration into the character Sauron, who is the main antagonist of the Lord of the Rings franchise. In the last season, Sauron was only just revealed at the end of the season, but we spent a great portion of time exploring how he came to be what he is at this point in the story. So it's a lot of unseen things from season 1 that we really didn't get to see. The performance by Charles Vickers as Sauron is quite outstanding, honestly, and arguably one of the best villain adaptations I have seen, making him a much more formidable antagonist. The films really never explored Sauron the way this show has. It just helps paint a picture of how evil the character truly is. We really only got to see Sauron as his like big looming evil eye. Never got to really see him as an actual character, and this show is exploring that quite immensely and doing a great job so far. And then, besides that, I mean, overall, just in this first episode, the overall storytelling, the writing, and then the performances just in this episode alone feel a lot more nuanced than last season. Performances by Morph Dick Clark and as Galadriel and Robert Aramayo as Elrond are quite impeccable as we navigate a conflict in how to handle Sauron in this episode between the two characters. And really, guys, too, just the overall special effects, the costume design, the production value of the show continues to be truly outstanding. I truly love the setting of the Elves' Kingdom that they show in this episode, and we get to see a little bit more of their culture, just how they are as a group. It's something I do feel like Game of Thrones has lacked, and something that The Lord of the Rings always seems to have been able to capture, even in this show. Game of Thrones House Dragon was always good for like the political aspect of things. There's some great battles, but I don't know. I just feel like sometimes they kind of missed out on the culture, and just in Tolkien's universe, there's just so much culture that they kind of explore, and I really like that. So, and then we're gonna go on to the review for episode 2. What was a hit with that? Some big things that I liked in that episode. So in this episode, we explore some other areas of this vast world, such as the dwarves and the kingdom called Khazad Dum. This is a kingdom that was in season 1. Characters during the fourth and Disa return from season 1, as does the king of the group during the third, which is during the fourth father. I thought this episode did a great job in exploring the conflicts of the dwarves and how they are a stubborn clan, so to speak. Picking up from last season, during the third and during the fourth, they have conflicts over an alliance with the elves, as the elves seek mithril, a material that can potentially help save the elves' life-sustaining tree. I thought the performances of both Durrance and Disa are quite impeccable here. We have Owen Arthur as Durin the fourth, Peter Mullen as Durin the third, and Sophia Namvedi as Disa. I thought they all came together to bring a nice, decent narrative here. And then we also going to look at the elves, guys. There was a moment in particular I really liked in this episode between Elrond and this other elf, Círdan, who's like a wise elf. It truly stood out to me. It was a moment of immense dialogue between the two, and the performances meshed with this dialogue made it such a strong moment and helped build Elrond's character and his motivations. These were things I truly felt were missing in the previous season, where the dialogue didn't measure up to much, but the nuanced improvement is made clear with scenes like this. So, really good job there. This episode does a great job continuing to explore this evil machinations of Sauron as he manipulates Celebrimbor into making more rings of power. Again, Charles Vickers steals the show in every scene he is in this season and in this episode so far. I really do feel like this season is really Sauron's story for the most part. Like it's almost like he's the main character, and I'm loving it. Great villain exploration there. Then we're going to go on to the review for episode 3. What was a hit for this episode? What some things that stood out for me here. So in this episode, we explore the last known faction in this universe, which is the Realm of Men. I really haven't explored them since the big battle in the Southlands at the end of season 1. This episode explores the aftermath of that battle as the Kingdom of Numenor regroups from the traumas they faced at the battle. We had Queen Muriel, who is now blind from her injuries sustained in that battle. Also, Captain Elendil is a pretty big character in this arc, and as he's grieving the loss of his son Isildur. Isildur, if people don't know, is a huge character in Lord of the Rings who actually ends up killing Sauron originally before Sauron's return to power in the Third Age. How that will progress in this show remains to be seen, but just a little fun fact for anyone who doesn't know, Isildur is. What I found enjoyable with this episode was that it explored a bit of the political side of the Kingdom of Numenor. Kind of got a lot of like Game of Thrones, House of Dragon vibes with this political aspect. So the aspect for that, we have advisor to the Queen Pharazôn, who's her cousin, and he and it begins to question her ability to lead, as do other lords of the kingdom. Although it doesn't explore the political aspect as much as, say, House of Dragon, it still touches upon it quite nicely and sets up for more in episodes to come. So yeah, they kind of sprinkle in some stuff, not as much as I would have liked, but it's a nice little start to their arc in this season. We do explore Isildur himself, who was thought to have died at the Battle of Mount Doom in the last season. Again, I would say his storyline was arguably the best of the episode as we explore other colonies towards like the south, such as Pelargir. It is here too we get to see the return of fan favorite character Arondir. I think that's how you say his name. But he's an elvish warrior. We get to see him grieve for the loss of his love, Bronwyn, as well as Theo, Bronwyn's son. There's some decent fight sequences during this arc that I really enjoyed. It's on full display Arendir's ability to be a warrior. And there's also a pretty decent spider nest fight that Isidore is in. Both of those sequences I enjoyed tremendously. I'm definitely excited to see where this arc's going to go since it's so close to the home base of Mordor. Mordor really hasn't become Mordor yet, but after the battle in last season, it definitely is on the way of becoming that. Then again, this episode also explores Sauron posing as Anatar, as he continues to manipulate Celebrimbor and making the Rings of Power. Anatar is like this godly figure that's sent to help with all gifts, so it's like a character of deception that Sauron is depicting here. We do tie into the dwarf story arc here as well with this whole Ring of Power creation, as they look to have the rings created to escape the predicament of a failing infrastructure from inside their rocky kingdom. Characters during the third and during the fourth get a nice scene as they reconcile to save their kingdom. Most of this, though, continues to just build Sauron's villain's rise, which I am all for. But there wasn't really a whole lot going on in those in this episode of the dwarves. It was more just to kind of build Sauron for the most part. And then we go into episode 4. The review for that was a hit. So episode 4 reaches the halfway mark of this season already, which is crazy to say, because this was also a very strong outing for the sophomore season of Rings of Power. So what I liked about this episode was that it touched upon quite a few Easter eggs to the various other Tolkien works, such as The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. One of the big things I picked up in this episode, before we go into that, actually, I haven't really talked about the one storyline, only because it hasn't been really that relevant, I felt, to the narrative, but it does play a big part in this episode. So basically, there's the arc with these two Harfoots, Nori and Poppy, and they uncover this stranger. And basically, he's like this mysterious, like, wizard-like figure, and then you see a little bit of, they show him a bit in the first season, and then he has like this big battle with these dark warriors towards the end, and then he basically goes off on a quest to find answers, and basically Nori follows him. So they kind of come across some dark warriors in this season, and then they kind of get separated after like a brief battle. So this episode kind of shows like the aftermath of that battle. So back to what I was saying before, though, Easter egg wise, what I picked up on this episode was when the two Harfoot characters, Nora and Poppy, they come across another race of similar people to themselves known as Stores. Guys, on my honest interpretation of this, I wouldn't be surprised that as this show progresses, if the Harfoots and Stores eventually just become one race. I was a little confused when they showed the Harfoots, because I was like, well, they're just hobbits, but why are they called Harfoots? But now that they're showing another race, it's like, oh, there's different races, and they kind of talk about this one thing, I don't want to spoil too much, that's going to kind of unite them. So that's what makes me think that what's going to unite them is the Shire, that big, peaceful piece of land, and they're just going to eventually just become this ultimate race of hobbits. I think that's like a major Easter egg myself. I could be crazy, but I thought that was a really big heads up to that. Another Easter egg was the introduction of Tom Bombadil. He makes his debut in this show. For fans of the book, Bombadil is a big character in the novels, even though the version here may not make the Tolkien purse happy. I honestly thought that his debut helped provide meaning, though, to the story of the stranger, by providing us a reasoning behind the dark forces that have been chasing him and who they are, while attempting to tie the narrative to Sauron. It does feel kind of like a cheap way to tie it all together after 2 seasons, but at least it's starting to go in some kind of direction. So I can't complain there. And then also we have in the Southlands, we also get to explore more of Isildur, Arendir, and the new character Esther. This episode mostly explores them as they attempt to find and rescue Theon from a mysterious force. So the force is revealed to be none other than a breed of Ent, which is another callback to the ones that Merry and Pippin ran into in the Two Towers. I thought that was just like again like a nice little Easter egg just to see those kind of creatures kind of return. Just a lot of throwbacks to the old movies I really enjoyed. And finally, this is more of just my honest interpretation of what's going on here, but we do get to focus a bit on Elrond and Galadriel as they begin their quest to save Celebrimbor from Sauron. It's here that they run into these dark wights awakened by Sauron and also run into an army of orcs. The big thing I took away from this episode was that we see Galadriel become more dependent on the one ring she possesses, which Elrond objects to. I thought it was a nice reference to how the rings truly do influence its wearer, like when Frodo was influenced by the One Ring. And someone as brave and smart as Galadriel seems to be kind of falling for its power, thinking it's a guy rather than a curse. Just like Frodo kind of started to become so infatuated with the ring in the movies, it feels like Galadriel is starting to do the same in the show. And I thought that was a nice little kind of Easter egg to how the rings really are these great, powerful objects that corrupt even the, greatest of warriors. It makes for an interesting narrative between Elrond and Galadriel as they have opposing views of the how to use the rings. But it remains to be seen where this will lead for the two characters in this version of the story. So that was everything that was hit for me, guys, for these first 4 episodes. I'm going to go into what was a miss now for the 4 episodes, the bad. So really the only downside I had with these episodes was really the whole Hardfoot story arc. I kind of talked about it earlier. If you ever watched the show Halo show, one of my biggest gripes with that show was that the story arcs didn't really tie into the main narrative, and I get the same feeling here. Even though episode 4 starts to kind of connect it, I just really haven't felt as invested in this story. And I just don't know where it's going to go besides connecting to Sauron somehow. So, yeah, it's like I do have faith that the arc of the Mysterious Stranger will tie in down the line. It's just kind of just hard to be invested. Lord of the Rings just did such a great job tying in all their pieces because before branching off, but the arc feels a bit off-putting since season 1. So hopefully that tie-in will come in sooner rather than later. The other thing that slightly bugs me is the fact that the Numenor storyline really hasn't developed this season. One of the pivotal arcs of the Second Age, which is what was being explored in this show, is the fall of Numenor, and we really haven't been given time to invest in those characters of the Numenor story arc. I mean, I'm hoping that will change as the season progresses, but we only have a season for that to happen, and we've only gotten 1 episode of these characters. So, what gives? What's going to happen there? From what I'm hearing, the last 3 episodes are going to just focus on one big battle. So, in a sense, I mean, unless they're going to be part of that, you only have 1 more episode to really kind of focus on them before you get into like a big war. So, we'll see how that all plays out. But that is everything, guys. The conclusion: despite an unclear subplot and a lack of inclusion of Numenor, the first 4 episodes of the new season for Rings of Power are solid. The exploration into the machinations and rise of Sauron is the highlight, and it's some great storytelling, performances, and writing make this a much more nuanced season so far. With all that said, I would give the following rating for all these episodes as a solid 4 out of 5. I have enjoyed it tremendously. It's definitely way better than the first season. But yeah, that's all I had today, guys. As always, please comment, like, and subscribe to the channel, and I'll be reviewing the show as it releases. Thank you. This is Jake from CINECALIBER.